fast-changing world, it's not surprising that what was once vital is now considered old-fashioned. We're talking about skills, specifically those the baby boomer generation honed. But which skills do millennials see as irrelevant in today's digital age? Times have indeed changed since our parents and grandparents were young adults. We often hear them nostalgically recount tales of walking to school barefoot in 4 feet of snow, though we doubt the literal truth of those stories. Nevertheless, they engaged in activities that were common in their time, but are now utterly useless in our current era of rapid technological advancement. Join us as we explore the 13 baby boomer life skills kids today no longer have. Finding a phone booth these days is quite a challenge. Phone booths came about when telephones were new and expensive. They provided a cheaper option for anyone who needed to make a call in public.
Hey, I'm telling you, 1048 Churchill is an empty lot. Check it again, Sam.
Are you sitting down? Twins! Yeah, I just found out.
Maria, was I in the 405 at 515 or the 515 at 405?
The first phone booth we know of appeared in 1878 between Bridgeport and Black Rock Con. It cost 15 cents to use. A true public telephone, however, didn't show up until 1889. A payphone, also spelled payphone or pay telephone, is usually a coin-operated public telephone found in telephone booths or busy public places. To use it, you have to prepay by putting in coins, swiping a credit or debit card, or using a telephone card. The company running the payphone usually pays rent or a share of the revenue to the property owner where the phone is installed. In the late 1920s, payphone calls in the United States cost 2 cents. In the 1930s, it went up to 5 cents. By the 1960s, a typical local call was 10 cents, 15 cents in the 1970s, and 25 cents in the 1980s. In the early 21st century, a local call usually cost 50 cents. The rise of cell phones in the early 21st century led to the near disappearance of payphones. New York City, which once had 30,000, removed its last public payphone in 2022. Curious about the charm of typewriters? Stay tuned for a journey into the rhythmic world of clacking keys and tangible words. Typing is an important skill nowadays because we all use keyboards. But before those keyboards were connected to computers, there was a machine called a typewriter. It was an all-in-one device where you put a ribbon inside, and it pressed against a clean sheet of paper.
Good typists are always in demand, and so are typewriters, an English invention in the reign of Queen Anne. But the first commercial model was not made until 1873.
When you pressed a key, a hammer with that letter would hit the ribbon, leaving the letter on the paper. If you made a mistake, fixing it was difficult because there was no whiteout and you had to start again. For millennials, the idea of using a typewriter might seem old-fashioned. In our time, we're used to making quick edits, using autocorrect and saving everything digitally. Typewriters may appear slow and inefficient because each key press is final. There's no backspace or delete button. Storing physical papers can also be more hassle than saving digital files. Despite these drawbacks, typewriters provide a unique and nostalgic experience. They offer a distraction-free writing environment, a break from the constant notifications and distractions of modern technology. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, the only sound being the rhythmic clicks of the typewriter keys. Each word appears on paper as you type, a permanent mark of your thoughts. There's a certain charm to the tangible nature of the process, the physicality of seeing your words materialize on paper. While it may not be as convenient as the technology we have today, typewriters have a simplicity that some find appealing. They force you to slow down, to think carefully before hitting each key. In a world where speed often takes precedence, this deliberate approach to writing can be a refreshing change. Were you planning a summer vacation and thinking about hitting the road? Well, it's a lot easier now than it used to be for our grandparents, who had to rely on big paper maps and compasses. Those maps would get all wrinkled and worn by the time they reached their destination. You're fortunate because nowadays you have everything you need right on your phone or built into your car. Finding a gas station is a breeze. Back then, you had to plan your route carefully or just hope you stumbled upon a gas station along the way. Those old maps were huge, delicate, and a real pain to fold back up once you unfolded them. No wonder not many millennials know how to use them or even want to. A survey by the British mapping company Ordnance Survey found that only 20% of millennials wish they were better at reading maps. However, it might be a good idea, considering that 60% of millennials rely on digital maps when going somewhere new, and 25% even depend on them in their daily lives. While Google Maps and Waze are great for navigation, plenty of stories about GPS failures leave travelers stranded in the middle of nowhere. And what if your phone runs out of battery or you can't access online maps? Reading a physical map might seem a bit daunting, but it could be a valuable skill to have in an emergency. So even though the days of wrestling with giant maps are mostly behind us, there's something to be said for having a backup plan. Before the era of pixel-perfect screens, analog TV tuning ruled the airwaves.
When you hate to see
Your old TV,
it's time for Samsung,
if you're feeling down,
then throw it out.
switch to Samsung.
Join us in exploring the transition from snowy screens to crystal-clear images. Children loved having remote controls for the TV. It meant they didn't have to leave the sofa to change the channel when Dad wanted to switch from the news to football. However, Dad usually held onto the remote, and it would often get lost in the recliner. Then it became the kids' responsibility to find it again. Nowadays, things are much simpler. The original type of television, called analog television, used analog signals to send both video and audio. This system conveys the brightness, colors, and sound through the analog signal's amplitude, phase, and frequency. The problem with analog signals is that they can be affected by electronic noise and interference, leading to a snowy picture and disruptions in sound when the signal is weak. In comparison, digital television or DTV signals offer better picture quality. The signal stays clear until it drops below a certain level, causing reception to become impossible or intermittent. Analog television can be transmitted wirelessly through terrestrial television, satellite television, or cable networks like cable television. Before the widespread adoption of DTV, all broadcast television systems relied on analog signals. In the 2000s, prompted by the efficiency of compressed digital signals, many countries started transitioning to digital television. This transition has already been completed in several countries, while others, particularly in Africa and Asia, are still in the process of making the switch. Different countries have set various deadlines for the cessation of analog broadcasts. Cursive writing is like an art form and looks really nice, especially when done neatly. Nowadays, you can use all sorts of cool fonts on your computer, but it's not quite the same. We find it kind of sad that schools don't think it's important to teach cursive anymore. It might not be as crucial as math or English, but it's still a handy skill. It's a bit tricky to figure out if cursive writing is disappearing or if people just think it is. Cursive writing has faced some challenges over the last few decades. In 2010, U.S. schools weren't required to teach it as part of the Common Core standards. Normally, each state decides if it wants to keep cursive in its curriculum, and many have chosen to do so. There's a good reason behind their decision. According to the National Library of Medicine, cursive writing, not the regular printing style, can help identify learning problems related to space and graphics. It also frees up mental abilities, letting students focus on other things which experts call automaticity. According to Johns Hopkins University, learning cursive can improve motor skills, help with language learning, and enhance overall learning. However, with the rise of email, digital note-taking, and electronic signatures, there aren't as many chances as possible to show off your fancy handwriting. Before CDs emerged in the 1980s, people used record players and vinyl records to listen to music.
The measure of great hi-fi components is pure sound and simple, reliable service. Now, JCPenney introduces MCS series components. So finely engineered and designed, so incredible in sound, MCS measures up to the greatest names in the business.
Vinyl records and their players weren't just for music. They were also seen as a stylish part of home decor. Some folks even had special cabinets just for their records. In the 1960s and 1970s, the baby boomers, who are now adults, used different technologies for their music. Vinyl records were the top choice for listening to music, and record players were the common devices to play them. Cassette tapes became popular in the 1970s, offering a portable way to enjoy music. Besides that, reel-to-reel tape recorders were used for both recording and playing back music. These gadgets were the main ways people listened to and stored their music during those decades. Unfortunately, vinyl records were delicate and could easily get damaged. If you wanted to keep them in good condition, you had to take good care of them. Surprisingly, vinyl records are making a comeback today, and many people are excited about it, even though there's a cost involved. In recent years, interest in vinyl records has been revived. People are rediscovering the warm and authentic sound that vinyl produces. Audiophiles, in particular, appreciate the analog quality of vinyl recordings. The tactile experience of handling a vinyl record, carefully placing it on the turntable and gently lowering the needle, has a nostalgic charm that digital formats lack. Collecting vinyl records has become a popular hobby, with enthusiasts hunting for rare and vintage releases. Record stores, which were once on the decline, are experiencing a resurgence, and some artists are releasing their music on vinyl alongside digital formats. The resurgence of vinyl is not just about nostalgia, it's also a reaction to the digital age. In a world dominated by streaming services and digital downloads, vinyl records offer a tangible and immersive way to experience music. But can the lost art of cooking from scratch be a recipe for reconnection in today's fast food world? Stay tuned to discover the unexpected in our next exploration. Back in the day, from the 1950s to the 1980s, cooking in baby boomer homes was like a delicious adventure. People didn't rely much on ready-made foods. Instead, they were kitchen wizards crafting meals from scratch. It was a time when the whir of mixers and the sizzle of pans filled the air, creating a symphony of homemade goodness. Baby boomers, born after World War II, were the kings and queens of their kitchens during this era. Unlike today, fewer pre-packaged convenience foods are on the shelves, so families get creative with raw ingredients. Imagine the kitchen as a magical workshop where recipes were spelled, and each meal was a potion brewed with love. Homemade meals weren't just about satisfying hunger. They were a celebration of flavors and family traditions. The kitchens were filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread, simmering stews, and sizzling bacon. It was a culinary carnival where simple ingredients transformed into culinary masterpieces. In those days, cooking was an art, and every household had its own set of secret recipes. The kitchen was a place of experimentation, where grandmas passed down their culinary wisdom to eager young chefs. Cakes were frosted, soups simmered, and casseroles baked to perfection, turning every meal into a feast of homemade wonders. While today's world might be filled with instant noodles and microwave dinners, the kitchens of the 1950s were a canvas for creativity. Baby boomers crafted meals from the heart, leaving a legacy of delicious memories and the timeless aroma of home-cooked love. It's funny to see kids today trying to figure out old phones.
There are several good places in your home where an extension telephone will be of great convenience and comfort for you and your family.
They used to be simple, and the sound they made when you dialed a number was pretty unique. Back then, it took forever to dial a number. When button phones came around, everyone wanted one. But forget about sticking your finger in that tiny hole if you had a nice manicure. Pens came in handy, though. Kids today might not get the struggle of waiting to use the one phone in the house. It had a long, tangled cord that reached into the next room if you needed privacy. In 2018, 84% of households had smartphones. By 2020, over 80% of adults aged 25, 34 had gone completely wireless, according to the U.S. Census and National Center for Health Statistics. Each digit is assigned a specific number of pulses, making it a digital system. This decadic dialing system was the world's first widespread digital addressing system. Even though some people mistakenly call it analog, it's more like the telegraph, a mechanical and digital communication method. The first patent for the rotary dial was granted in 1892, but the version with holes in the wheel didn't come until about 1904. It wasn't widely used in the bell system in the United States until the early 1920s. Now, with cell phones, we store everything: notes, phone numbers, calendars. But this reliance on technology has led to digital amnesia. People don't bother remembering things because they know it's in the cloud. Research from Kaspersky Lab, a cybersecurity company, shows this growing trend. In today's world of social media, we're more connected to our old friends and family than ever before. Instead of going through the traditional process of writing a letter, we can simply drop a quick message on Facebook to catch up with people. Back in the day, writing letters used to be a common way of staying in touch. People would sit down with pen and paper, carefully craft their thoughts, put the letter in an envelope, write the recipient's address, stick it on a stamp, and then send it through the postal service. However, in today's fast-paced digital age, many consider this method a waste of time. Why go through all that trouble when you can type out a message and send it instantly via email? Despite the efficiency of modern communication, a certain charm and warmth are associated with receiving a handwritten letter. It's a personal touch that electronic messages often lack. Imagine opening your mailbox and finding not a bill but a heartfelt letter waiting for you. That would be a delightful surprise, Mr. Postman. Now let's step back a few decades to the period between the 1950s and the 1990s. Baby boomers, the generation born post-World War II, often relied on handwritten letters as their primary mode of communication. This era was characterized by a slower pace of life, where people took the time to express their thoughts on paper. In those days, people cherished the process of writing letters. It wasn't just a means of communication, but a form of expression and connection. Handwritten letters carried a personal touch that transcended the words on the page. The act of sending and receiving letters was a ritual that fostered deep connections and lasting memories. Look at that beautiful sunset. Get your phone, open the camera, press the button, and boom, you've got a picture of the sunset. But back in the day, before everything was digital, capturing that perfect sunset shot was quite a challenge. You had to buy a roll of film, pop open the camera, carefully slide in the film, because if it got exposed, it was ruined, wind it up, and only then were you ready to snap the shot.
Say, do you know what this is? It's a Kodak 35mm color slide. Not very big, is it? Only 2 inches by 2 inches. And yet when you project it on a home screen, you get color pictures as big as life.
By that time, the sun had probably already set, and the hurdles didn't end there. You had to wait until the entire film roll was used up before taking it to a special photo developer. Only then would you find out if your sunset picture turned out well, which often didn't. Compare that to today, when you can take 100 shots and pick the perfect one for your Facebook cover. Now let's take a stroll down memory lane to the golden era of film cameras and darkrooms from the 1950s to the 1990s. Back then, taking a photo wasn't as simple as pointing and clicking. It was a hands-on, manual affair. You had to load a roll of film into your camera, capturing a limited number of shots before you needed to replace it. Each photo was a carefully considered investment. No rapid-fire bursts of pictures like we're used to today. But the real magic happened in the dark room. Imagine a dimly lit space filled with the scent of chemicals. Baby boomers would skillfully develop their photos in developer, stop bath, and fixer solutions trays. It was a meticulous process that demanded patience and precision. Let's journey into a time when balancing a checkbook was an essential financial skill. Talking about old-fashioned skills from the boomer generation, let's focus on the ancient art of writing checks. Believe it or not, checks are like fossils in today's digital age. They're practically extinct. Many countries have bid farewell to these paper relics, making them about as trendy as last century's bell-bottoms. Balancing a checkbook, once a crucial life skill, has become a relic of the past. The majority of folks prefer the ease of managing their money online, making those little checkbook ledgers seem like relics in a museum. However, not everyone has hopped on the digital money train, especially some sweet grannies still sticking to their check-writing ways. If you happen to have a check-loving granny in your life, maybe it's time to introduce her to the simplicity of modern living. She might not shower you with thanks immediately, especially if she's deeply rooted in her old-fashioned habits, but you'll have given it a shot. Let's delve into the fascinating era when balancing a checkbook was a financial rite of passage. Picture a time in the 1950s when people meticulously recorded every transaction by hand. Balancing a checkbook was like solving a financial puzzle, a practice that demanded attention to detail and a touch of mathematical finesse. In those pre-digital days, the checkbook was a person's financial compass, guiding them through the twists and turns of their expenses. It's a skill that may seem obsolete now, but back then, it was a dance with numbers, a choreography of income and expenditure that many embraced with diligence and, believe it or not, a touch of charm. But what does this tactile connection to the past teach us about our current push-button comforts? Discover more in our next exploration. In the not-so-distant past, getting some fresh air inside your car wasn't just a push of a button away. Back in the 1950s through the 1990s, the magic of making your car wind seem to dance with the wind involved a more hands-on approach, literally. Unlike the effortless hum of today's power windows, these vintage gems required some elbow grease. A simple handle, often nestled by the side of the door, was your gateway to the world outside. As you turned the crank clockwise, there was a satisfying resistance, a tactile connection to the mechanism that brought the window to life. It was a hands-on experience, a ritual that turned mundane journeys into interactive adventures. There was an art to mastering the perfect speed for your descent, a finesse developed through trial and error. Too fast and the wind rushed in with a boisterous roar. Too slow, and you risked losing that precious moment of connection with the outside world. The clanking sound of the window rolling down became a signature melody of road trips, a symphony of mechanical nostalgia. In the time before the internet, getting information for research was like going on a treasure hunt using old-fashioned methods. Instead of typing on a computer, people went to libraries to read books, academic journals, and newspapers. These places were like big treasure chests filled with all sorts of information. Imagine going on a real-life adventure, flipping through pages and looking for clues to answer your questions. Libraries were like magical kingdoms with shelves of books, periodicals, and reference materials. Researchers used to spend hours exploring these kingdoms, searching for the hidden gems of knowledge they needed. If the treasure they sought wasn't in their local library, sometimes they would ask other libraries for help using a system called interlibrary loans. To gather even more valuable information, researchers would seek out the wise wizards of knowledge, the experts in the field. Unlike today's quick emails or online chats, they communicated with these experts through letters, phone calls, or even face-to-face meetings. It was a slower process, but the experts shared their wisdom and insights, adding a personal touch to the quest for knowledge.